Castlevania. It's one of the first games I ever played on the NES, and I think it still holds up fairly well today. What little story there is tells us that we're stepping into the shadows of the deadliest dwelling on Earth. You've arrived at Castlevania. You have to get through 6 monstrous floors before you even meet up with the master of the house. But once you make it to the tower, you can count on a duel to the death. The Count has waited 100 years for a rematch. He's ready. Are you? It's a pretty simple setup, but it gets you pumped to play, especially that last sentence. Going through each level, you have a magic whip, which you can upgrade by hitting candles on the walls. This is also how you get hearts and secondary weapons. Now I remember this confusing me quite a bit when I first started playing, since it's become a kind of standard in games that hearts represent health or lives. In this game, however, there is sort of energy or mana that you use up whenever Simon uses his secondary weapons. Finding out which weapons work best on the boss and trying to keep that weapon throughout the level without dying or accidentally picking up another less useful one is part of the fun. While I love the platforming, the way Simon jumps can be a bit frustrating. You have no control over him once he's in the air. This, combined with some of the more frustrating enemies like the Medusa heads and the rate at which they spawn, makes me wish that you had at least a little bit more control over Simon when he jumps. Especially in the more precarious platforming sections. Getting hit by enemies knocks you backwards as well, which makes those platforming sections even more of a chore. Getting past these sections and learning how to best deal with them, though, is all part of the game. This game has some of the best 8-bit music I've ever heard. Each song fits its respective level well, while also being really catchy. There are a lot of enemies to encounter, everything from bats to zombies to skeletons. They're all there and it makes for some good variety. I think some of the enemies are used less than they could have been though, and others used much more. These witches and dogs are only used in the first level, which I always thought was a bit strange. It's a pretty minor gripe as they do make up for it by introducing so many different types of enemies later on. For the most part, the level design is phenomenal. The backgrounds have a lot of detail. Each level feels different from the last. Each location feels unique, even though the entire game only takes place in Dracula's mansion. Each level ends with a boss. These are presumably Dracula's friends, all of which different types of monsters. It's almost part of the fun wondering which monster is up next and what abilities they'll have. I can't even tell you how long it took me to beat the Grim Reaper before I finally got to the last level. In fact, I think he's actually a bit harder than Dracula himself. This is a hard game. Playing through a level again and again, getting further each time, or taking out just a little bit more of the boss's health before dying for the 10th time in a row is all part of the game. But when you finally beat that level that you've been tirelessly chipping away at, it is that much more rewarding. I give this game a 9 out of 10 on the nostalgic scale. All in all, Castlevania is not perfect, but it excels in so many areas that it's pretty close. Unfortunately, part of the difficulty can come in its stiff jumping mechanics and sometimes borderline unfair design. Despite these small shortcomings, it is still a great game. It has great level design, good enemy variety, and music so good you won't mind repeating the same level over and over. These make it one of the very best games the NES has to offer. If you like platformers and don't mind the difficulty that can lead to some intense frustration, I strongly recommend playing this game. Thanks for watching.